everyone, I hope you're all having a pleasant Shadowlands experience. I honestly haven't started mine yet because I want to avoid the crowds. Now, to get into the meat of the video itself, I'd like to show you this amazing piece of fan art created by Jiang Feng, which depicts the original Knights of the Silver Hand. Now, aside from being quite obviously anachronistic, I absolutely adore this piece. It really captures each of these great figures in their best light, no pun intended. From left to right you've got Uther the Lightbringer, then Tyrion the Ashbringer, then Saidan Dafrahan, and last but not least Turalyon in his High Exarch armor. So, do you notice that someone is missing from this picture? To give you a hint, if I would have titled the video the Dire Paladin instead of the Battle-Hardened Paladin, you would have guessed instantly who I would be talking about, probably. And what really surprised me is that this is one of the very rare pieces of fan art people have drawn that includes Saidan Dafrahan, and yet the fifth member of the original Knights of the Silver Hand is still not here. So yes, the subject of this video is Gavinrad the Dire, probably the most minor out of the original 5 Knights of the Silver Hand, and also the last addition to that particular group, so well, he was kind of a fifth wheel in the lore as well. Although to be fair, Uther, Tyrion and Turalyon are all major important characters, unlike Dafrahan and Gavinrad, which I guess makes it all the more sad that the artist included Dafrahan in that fan art and not Gavinrad. Now, Gavinrad was unique among the original 5 Knights of the Silver Hand in that he was a native of Stormwind, not of Lordaeron. He was a loyal knight, stated in several sources to have been a particularly pious one, and was one of the main and most successful commanders of Stormwind's armies during the First War. He was the one who implemented Anduin Lofar's strategy of striking at the orcs with fast, mobile knights, a strategy which achieved great success. Later, when Lofar went to deal with Medivh alongside Khadgar and Garona, Gavinrad was left in charge of Stormwind's defenses against the Horde in his absence. Well, with the mention that King Lane was said in the Last Guardian novel and even in World of Warcraft itself to be commanding the defenses until his assassination. And speaking of, after King Lane was assassinated, Gavinrad, alongside Lofar and Khadgar, coordinated the Stormwind's population evacuation and flight to Lordaeron. His next mention in the lore, not really a direct appearance, was his selection to be one of the first human paladins. And this is where the fifth wheel part comes in. Initially, Archbishop Alonsus Fowl approached Anduin Lofar, elected as the Alliance's chief military commander, to propose the Paladin project to him and propose the first 4 names who were either pious Lordaeron warriors or Lordaeron clerics who had some battle training. Then afterwards, while Lofar was inspecting these 4 new paladins, he came up with the idea of also proposing adding Gavinrad to their ranks, as he was his, quote, most faithful knight back in Stormwind and a, quote, good man, though he still preferred to have Turalyon as his chief lieutenant instead of Gavinrad. Each of the 5 paladins also received an ancient librum from Alonsus Fowl, each representing a specific virtue they were supposed to embody. Turalyon's was the librum of protection, Uther's was justice, Tyrion's retribution, Dafrahan's holiness, and Gavinrad received the librum of compassion. Now, unfortunately, we don't really have much of a hint of his personality, other than, well, that he was suitable and holy enough to be a paladin. Though, I suppose him receiving the librum of compassion is fitting given what happens to him later on. Now, Gavinrad fought in the Second War as well, naturally, though he barely makes an appearance in any of the sources detailing the conflict. Namely, other than his selection as a paladin, he has one other minor appearance in the Tides of Darkness novel, where, during the very first clash between Alliance Paladins and Horde Death Knights, he was one of, if not the first, paladin to overcome his Death Knight opponent's dark magic through his holy aura, which is impressive enough I suppose, though rather sad given what happens later on. Gavinrad was also the one who, during the ceremony where Arthas Menethil became a paladin, granted Arthas his hammer, Light's Vengeance. And later on, while the Death Knight Arthas was searching for Kel'Thuzad's remains near Anderhall, he fought with and killed Gavinrad. Now, the scene in the novel Arthas Rise of the Lich King is slightly expanded upon than the scene in Warcraft 3 where Gavinrad is killed, as Gavinrad also gets the lines of Balador the Bright and Sage Truthbearer, other paladins which Arthas had to kill in the Warcraft 3 mission. But it's still a fairly short scene, and well, it's more so utilized to expand upon the Death Knight Arthas' relationship and feelings towards the Paladins of the Silver Hand, rather than to talk about a personal relationship between Gavinrad and Arthas. And well, it is pretty much implied that Arthas and Gavinrad didn't really have any relationship beyond Gavinrad ceremonially granting him his Paladin Warhammer and then belonging to the same order. Namely, in the scene while Arthas was fighting with human soldiers, Gavinrad calls to him and asks him, quote, almost spitting the words, end quote, what happened to the hammer the paladins had granted him. Arthas casually claims that he has a better weapon now, but on, quote, a whim, offers to let his paladin brother live if he stood aside. Gavinrad then insults him with admittedly some scathing lines, talking about Uther's disappointment in him and how Arthas made a mockery of the Silver Hand. Arthas, enraged, then promises to reanimate Gavinrad after he slays him. The two then duel, with Arthas clearly having the upper hand and just toying with Gavinrad for a while. This is why I said that it was somewhat sad that Gavinrad was, in the Second War, one of the first paladins to defeat a Death Knight. Eventually, Arthas just slays Gavinrad, but despite his threat, he let him stay dead. Since he was killed with Frostmourne, presumably something like what happened to Uther's soul also happened to him, because after the Lich King's defeat, his soul, now corrupted, was cursed to wander Icecrown Citadel until some Frost Death Knights put it down. Ironically enough, given that he had received the Librum of Compassion, the corrupted soul of Gavinrad was known as Gavinrad the Cruel. So, this was the story of Gavinrad the Dire, the most minor of the original 5 Knights of the Silver Hand, and the only one originally not from Lordaeron, though still a somewhat interesting character, especially given his military importance in the First War, I think, and his accomplishment in being one of the first paladins to defeat a Death Knight. Thank you all for watching and listening to me, and I will see you all in my next video. Farewell.